Hello, everybody. Today, we're going to have a chat about the nature of reality, which is, my great passion, really. Of all the things that I research and write about, the nature of reality, what is this place? What is this I find the most fascinating. And losing touch with that knowledge is what got us where we are. And recovering that knowledge is the key, the absolute key to getting out of where we are and having a reality that is not about control and imposition and tyranny, but about something very different. And I saw an interview with two people from America. They live in Florida, Elena Bensonoff and Alejandro Feridas, who have a website called holistic.com. And I found it very interesting because they were talking about how they could pick up and read the frequencies of people, organizations, and so on. And I found it interesting because in my research over these decades, I could understand the process that they were talking about. Because we see the world as physical, with everything apart from everything else. But in fact, what seems to be physical is actually holographic, illusory, physical. And the foundation of this reality, the foundation of the body, the foundation of our awareness, the foundation of everything in this reality is vibrational frequency information fields. So every time we have a thought or feel an emotion, we are generating frequencies that relate to that thought, the nature of that thought, and the nature of that emotion. And they're very different frequencies with different emotions and different mental states. And so people talk about vibes. Oh, we'll get bad vibes off him. Well, that's exactly what you're getting. Because one of the fascinating things that we're going to chat about is that you can hide, if you're good at manipulating and putting up a fake face and image, you can hide your real self from, people's visual, if you like, physical reality. But you can't hide your true self or your true state of being on the level of frequency, because you're giving those frequencies off and you can't hide it, whereas you can hide your manipulation behind a smiley face and apparently, a very concerned, compassionate face, when behind it is something very different. I always think of Tony Blair, the former British Prime Minister, when I say that, because his eyes and his mouth and his facial expressions rarely speak the same language. But you go deeper into the vibes they give off, the frequencies they're generating from their state of being, and suddenly they can't hide that. So we're going to talk about that. And also, when we have experiences, when we feel trauma, experience trauma, emotion, and all these different things through our lives, they are all frequency fields. You could call them accurately frequency fields of information. So you might have a childhood trauma, and you won't only generate the frequency field of that trauma, the emotional response at that moment, but it also impacts upon your energetic field, the base information field of the body, and the man woman in this reality, and that stays in the field. And this field is part of what we call the subconscious. And so we are having these emotional incidents, we're having these traumas, and they are affecting the field. That vibration stays in the field at a level that you're not aware of, but it's influencing the behavior and perception of the conscious mind. You know, you might have a situation where you'll react against it really over the top. People go, oh, hold on a minute, that's a bit over the top, isn't it? But what's happened is that situation has triggered, if you like, the emotional memory of something much more traumatic. And so you're reacting to, apparently, to the incident in the moment, but actually you're reacting to something that's happened before that affected you deeply and is still in your energetic field. And what I've found over the years is if you acknowledge the traumas that are still affecting you, you bring them out of the subconscious, if you like, into the conscious mind. Oh, that's why I'm doing this. That's why I feel like this. That's why I'm reacting like this. Then those traumas can be balanced out, deleted from the field, and they stop affecting you. So acknowledging these things is very important. And that's a big area of the work of Elena and Alejandro. So it's something I wanted to talk to them about, because so many people are affected all the way through their lives by something that happened in childhood or whatever, even if consciously they don't think they are, and they don't, well, I'm not affected by that, let that go. Well, your conscious mind may have, but your energetic field is still holding it. So it's a personal thing, an individual thing, but it's also a collective thing. Because my goodness me, within the collective energetic field, what we call humanity, is an enormous amount of trauma and memory, which is seriously impacting on collective response. For instance, the reflex action feeling of fear of authority. You know, your fear of authority, you know, big brother authority, can absolutely be affected by your experiences of, you know, any form of authority, back to parents even, earlier in your life. And there is also the collective historic memory, if you like, that humanity carries. So things that happened even when we weren't here can affect our response to them through this collective field and this collective memory. So put all that together, and we're going to have a chat about it with Elena and Alejandro, and this is how it went. Alejandro and Elena, welcome. And we've chatted in the last few days a little bit about the work that you do. You've done a reading for me, so I could get a more understanding of the way you work. And I must say, a lot of my life can be found on the internet, but you picked up parts of my life that are not on the internet, not least in my childhood, which was interesting and impressive. So let's start by looking at the kind of totality of what you do. What is your work about?
Yes, thank you, David, so much for having us together here with you. And of course, it's an honor for us to read and explore frequencies, including your own personal frequencies and life story. So thank you so much. What do we do? That's kind of a huge question to try to answer in a short period of time, but I will say that we read human consciousness. And through the frequencies, which are the different layers of emotions, that's what constitutes our human experience, the reality that we are part of. So we explore human frequencies, different layers of consciousness, in order for human beings to understand how truly powerful they are.
So where did this whole arena come from in your lives then? I mean, was it a revelation or just a series of things over a period of time which brought you to this understanding?
I would say it's been out of curiosity initially. Alejandro and I came together, and we both are very curious by nature and very open. And we wanted to understand, why is it that we were feeling very different feelings as far as our intuitive abilities, what we were intuitively feeling versus the narratives that we were given, whether it's through the news or any kind of media that was feeding us. And we wanted to see what was that discrepancy. So initially, the inspiration came from Dr. Hawkins' scale of consciousness. That's the only thing that we incorporate in our work that comes from him. And of course, we expanded that so much bigger and deeper because we recognize that we're not just one frequency in time and space. We're so much more. So we began to come up with different areas of what constitutes that person's reality, whether it's how they perceive their financial aspects, their health, relationships, personal growth, right? How a person incarnates. We also recognize that a moment of incarnation and a moment of birth, a lot of times there is a drop that occurs, right? Based on whatever the mom is experiencing when she's carrying the baby in utero. And then where a person is today, we also recognize that throughout life, we're not meant to just stay in those frequencies. Every one of us has the free will. If we're able to deal, to learn, to expand from all the past experiences that we've had and not become victims of those experiences, but truly honor the journey that we've walked on over and over and over. We see this beautiful journey we call the hero's journey, where every human being is capable of transcending their birth and their incarnation frequency to go into this higher frequencies.
So, the way I've seen it over the years is we look at experience and we see it in and of itself. And so if you had a bad experience, well, you feel bad about it. But I look at my life, for instance, and some of the most challenging experiences I've had in the moment, horrible, have actually given me the greatest gifts. Because they've made me stronger, or they've made me more aware. They've made me look at something in myself. And I think, it's one of the things that you talk about is reevaluating what an experience is. So you can not like it, but you can see the gift part of it, that it's actually giving you something, and not just see it as negative because you don't like it.
Yes, human nature is usually to judge everything. And what we've recognized and realized during thousands of readings of public figures, private figures as well, historic figures, is nothing is good or bad. Nothing. Everything serves a purpose. And actually, every experience that we have is here to help us grow. And you remember in your reading, we've gone through dips, and it's through those dips when your frequencies go down is when you have your biggest expansion, because it gives you the ability. You don't see it in the moment when it's happening, but if you were to review your life and go back, you'll recognize that those were the greatest moments that have helped you and propelled you to move towards where you are today. So the journey itself is absolutely divine and beautiful, and we cannot judge it as bad.
When you talk about dips, for people watching, you say you come in at a certain frequency. Well, of course we do. We're all at a certain frequency, at whatever that frequency is, all the time. And then through our lives, that frequency can go down, get more dense. It can go up, and it's like a roller coaster. But it's the challenges often that awaken you. So it seems like a dip in the down moment, but actually it gives you something that can expand your awareness. My life has been a roller coaster of exactly that.
Yes. Like you said earlier, it's about based on what you're experiencing is the feeling that is giving you, and when those emotions that are been triggered, how is it that you feel when those emotions are being triggered, right? And as you learn to cope with those emotions, as you learn to recognize your inner power as well, and that you have the power within you to pretty much control your perspective or change the way you view life, and by controlling your thoughts, then you start to realize that, there's definitely, it's got to be more than what I'm feeling right now. There's got to be a greater feeling. And it's just for the sake of the experience that we go through all these dips, and we pull ourselves out of it. And of course, at the moment, we have no idea of what's coming next. But on a deeper level, the inner wisdom is always guiding you, and it's just a matter of paying more attention to our inner voice, our inner wisdom, and less to the voices of the outer world.
Yeah, well, the way I see this is there is a force which is a frequency. It's a frequency. We're going to come to that because I know you found quite a common frequency of manipulation in all the people that you would expect that frequency of manipulation to be in, shall we say. And when I look at this manipulation, the foundation of it is to stop the population hearing that inner voice. It's to pull people only into what I would call a 5 sense level of perception. And again, this goes in sync with your work as well. Your perceptions become your reality. Your perceptions become your experience. And what we seem to have done is been manipulated to give control of our perceptions to someone else instead of getting them from within. So that our perceptions are not perceptions we've taken off the shelf and been told what they should be, which is what, of course, censorship and all this stuff is all about. It's about control of perception, thus control of behavior, thus control of what humanity does and what we call human society.
Yes, but the more we learn or realize that that we have the power and everything begins with us, within us, then we're going to rely less and less on the outer world and expect the outer world to give us the sense of peace that we want to experience. And we focus more our attention in what we are feeling within, and allow that inner peace to burst and to feel it. And once we do that, then the outer world will change automatically by default. Our perspective of life, of the outer world, will be different, even if nothing has changed socially, politically, economically. Our perspective will be shifting, and our vibration, because of our vibrational frequency is rising.
Yeah, this is one of the key reasons that I wanted to have a chat today. In that what we call the outer world is, from my perspective anyway, the inner world made manifest. So I say to people, if you want to look what's going on inside yourself, look at your life. If you want to collectively see what's going on in the world, then look inside, because the inner self becomes the outer self, and we get caught, and it's a real trick in seeking to change the outer world, the projection of the inner self, in the outer world. It's like trying to change a movie by screaming at the movie screen. It ain't going to change. We've got to change the reel on the projector, which is generating it. And why this is so important, I feel now, is that we've reached a point where we are absolutely not going to change the outer world that's unfolded since the start of 2020 without changing the inner world. And it's that realization. My life is me. I'm generating it. I'm generating it not just from my perspective now, but the influence of past traumas and stuff that are influencing my perspective now. And that's why I find your work so fascinating, because it's looking at how you change the inner self and thus change the outer experience.
Yes. Definitely. And we, like you said, we're a reflection of society. What is happening within us is being reflected, right? So we are all contributing to society. So often we get upset and we blame society for the way it is, because it's not fitting within the box that we have created. But looking within is how we can actually impact it and change it collectively, right? Yeah.
Yes, it's what I talk about also, the frequencies of below 200, which have to do with what we call the hijacking of the matrix. Because really, when you are in the frequencies of below 200, this is where there's a lot of unprocessed emotions. There's a lot of force that has to happen in order for you to feel like you're part of the whole, right? So it creates this bigger separation from or the illusion of separation from your inner core, your inner self. And that's why, yes.
Before we go on, let's get the numbers so everyone's aware of that. Talk about now, you use two number systems to describe frequency. One is a percentage, and the other is a number from 0 to 1,000, right?
Yes.
So if you just explain those numbers, and then from now on, people will understand what we're talking about.
Yes. From 0 to 1,000 is a scale of consciousness that we apply to our work. This is initially was created by Dr. Hawkins. There's many people that talk about the scale. So really it has to do with frequencies that correspond to different emotions, right? So frequencies of guilt, shame, apathy, grief, anger, fear, right? Pride. 200 is the bridge. We call it the gateway bridge of courage. This is the realization that every human being has when they walk into this frequency of 200, that, wow, I'm connected to not only myself, but everything else collectively and everything that exists. So 200 is a very powerful frequency. But we also see actually the 150 frequency of anger can also be extremely powerful, because it helps people catapult them from a lower vibrational frequency to jump over into the frequencies of 200 and beyond. Of course, 310 is the frequency of willingness, 350 is the acceptance, 400 is reason, analytical mind, 500 is the love, unconditional love, 600 is the frequency of peace, and then, 540 was the joy frequency, And then between 700 to 1,000 is the frequency of enlightenment. And what we've measured is 1,000 being a fully integrated being, fully integrated experience on this earth plane. And we've measured a couple of avatars who have walked this earth at 1,000 frequency. And we also have found this 1,000 frequency in various different characters who have been part of this life, whether it was artists who channeled 1,000 frequency like Leonardo da Vinci. He had creativity in 1,000, which is unbelievable. And then tomorrow we're revealing frequencies of famous composers like Bach and Beethoven and Vivaldi. And you'll see that some of them also have those frequencies in their creativity as well. And then
there's the percentage.
Yes.
What's that percentage number you use as well?
Yes.
Well, the numbers that Elena just mentioned are determined by I would say, by the predominant emotion, right? So based on the predominant emotion is that determines the level of consciousness. And based on how you feel towards each aspect, it determines the level of resistance you're experiencing within that aspect. So the better you feel, the lower the level of resistance you're experiencing, right? Now, when it comes to percentages, we went into percentages because we realized that this was a major realization for us, that at first we thought that you have to vibrate at higher levels in order to enjoy life to the fullest. And then we came to the realization that that's really not the case. We have found many people that are vibrating at very low levels, like vibrating at 25. They incarnated at 25, they were born at 25, and they're currently at 25. But they are enjoying the role that they're playing in this reality 100%. So number one, it's not really that joy is the predominant emotion determining how much you are enjoying the role that you're playing, right? It's because joy vibrates at 540 on its own. So that's when we decided, okay, let's go into percentages, because this is more about quantity, and it's not at one single emotion that is determining these factors. So then we go into measuring how much the person is enjoying the role that they're playing. That's in the joy. It really doesn't matter how high or low you're vibrating to enjoy the role. Then we go into how much time you spend in the present moment or in the now. We also measure how much you pay attention to the ego, in the ego. And within the ego, we also measure the inferior version of the ego and the superior version of the ego. Then we also measure the person's integrity, as of how loyal and faithful they are towards their core values and beliefs. And we also measure the alignment, their alignment with their divine purpose, their alignment with their personal purpose. And divine purpose, we compare that to self-realization. And personal purpose, we compare that with self-actualization. Yeah. And besides
self-awareness, clarity.
Yes. We also measure self-awareness, clarity, compassion. And we measure compassion. We have incorporated in our new latest version of the reading, which is compassion, empathy, energy purity, which is a great indicator that tells you how ready you are to shift to a higher level of consciousness. No? And then we also have incorporated dimensions.
People were asking us about dimensions.
People were asking us constantly. So until we collected enough data, then now we have incorporated that, and we can tell which dimensions you're experiencing life. And that has a lot to do with not only your overall vibrational frequency, but also the frequencies related to each aspect of your life. Because you could be at 500, which is the overall vibrational frequency, the love level when it comes to consciousness. And but you are experiencing the aspect of creativity at 1000. So therefore, you more than likely are experiencing life on the seventh dimension. It is very possible, or the eighth dimension, right? Each dimension has different frequencies. So that was very fascinating, actually, to reveal. Yes.
So, how do you do it? What's the process by which you ascertain these frequencies of people, organizations?
Well, we use scalar wave technology, and we use three instruments simultaneously, and it's a double blind.
He doesn't see what
process.
I do. I don't see what he does, but we're connected. And of course, most of the time we use a person's photograph
Yes.
and their name, unless it's a historical figure from hundreds and thousands of years ago. Of course, we don't have a photo for that. We'll just use the name that person used at that lifetime, during their lifetime, and that's how we do the readings. It's not connected to any AI, in case somebody wants to know. It doesn't require internet. There is no technology that calculates it. It is input into the system, and then the information is revealed. And it basically showed us how everything, absolutely everything, is imprinted into the human morphogenetic field. So if you think of a human morphogenetic field, it's almost like a data center that collects all the information about every experience, event, situation, emotion that you've ever had. And it's knowing how to retrieve it. And this is how, David, we were able to retrieve your information, because it exists.
Yeah, I kind of follow all of that. But some people would say, what do you mean you use a name or you use a photograph? But of course, everything is frequency, and your name reflects the frequency that you're carrying. I mean, on a simple level, this is why a skilled psychic who wants to connect with a consciousness that's passed from this reality will say, have you got anything that they wore, like a ring? Because they're looking for the frequency that they're operating on, and able to connect and tune into that frequency. And I told you my own story about photographs. They don't just take a picture of someone; they take the essence of someone. And when my mother died a while ago now, I saw her body in the undertakers, and next to the body was a picture that my brother Paul had blown up. It was going to be displayed at the funeral. And I sat there, and it was one of the most tangible things I've ever felt. I looked at my mother's body, and of course it was lifeless. There was no life force. And I looked across at the picture, and it was alive. And what was captured, the life force that was captured in that picture and was not in the body anymore, that's the true self, that's the true I, that's the eternal I. And so I can understand how you can pick up someone's frequency from a photograph.
Yes, and also our name, right? Our name and the photo combined serves as an IP address in a way, right? So it gives, because we give information out into the field all the time. We're all energy beings, like radio frequencies, constantly omitting information and receiving information. So therefore, knowing how to tap in and retrieve whatever it is you're seeking is, it's really truly been a remarkable learning experience for us, eye-opening. And this is something I know many people have asked us to teach them. So, but most likely in 2022, we'll be teaching people how to do this.
I will say this, if I may, just a little adjustment. There is more about tuning in, right? Because we're all tapped in and turned on by default, tapped in by default in the non-physical world, and I would say turned on as long as we're breathing, and we need to tune in. So it's just amazing how because there are so many people that have the same name. One would ask, right? How is it that the many
John Smith.
John Smith everywhere? What if you're not picking up the right information from the right person? But it's just fascinating how our true self knows the exact information that you want to retrieve on a divine level, right? Divine superconscious mind level. And so we asked that question a few times, but every time we do the reading, we get to confirm that it is the right person. And yes, so just the name and the picture are very important, depending on how deep you want to go into it. But it is just the intention and the tuning in that allows divine intelligence to flow freely. Yes.
But if you're called John Smith,
Mm-hmm.
and over here is another John Smith, they're the same letters, but they won't be the same vibration.
Exactly.
Because the essence of this John Smith will be encoded in the name, and the essence of this John Smith, a different essence, a different frequency, will be encoded in that. And so I can understand how you can have the same name, but that name will give you a different frequency, because you're reading the essence encoded in that name, which is different from the essence encoded in that name.
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
Yes.
So when you work with people and you read their up and down roller coaster frequency life when they went up and down, what is the reason that the dips happen? Why do the dips happen in the frequency through your life?
It is based on the emotions that are experiencing at the moment.
And events and situations.
And the events that trigger those emotions. And very often when someone experiences a drop from utero down to birth, right? They incarnated at 500, for example, and they were born at the frequency of 250. So obvious to us, they were impacted by whatever the mother was experiencing at the time while they were in utero. And that the emotions that the mother was experiencing were imprinted onto the human field of the baby, right? So that's where they began their journey of experiencing what it is, what contrast feels like, right? It kind of becomes their boot camp. So it is emotions really that cause that impact or create that drop. Yes. Yeah. Then as we learn to process them, and pretty much our feeling towards those emotions when those emotions are being triggered changes, right? As we learn to disempower those unprocessed emotions, they're no longer impacting us the same way. Then we start feeling better until they're no longer holding us hostage mm-hmm. and cause that resistance that we were experiencing, right?
Yeah, that kind of holding you hostage. That's the it's kind of an emotional version of change the subject, don't want to talk about it.
Yes, exactly.
I do absolutely understand that when you've had something that was unpleasant that happened to you, you don't want to keep looking it in the eye. But it seems to me that when you acknowledge the emotional source of and how it's affecting you now, that acknowledgement can delete it from your field and it stops affecting you, right?
Yes, take its power away.
It does help, definitely. I think it's a step one to acknowledge it. And then knowing the details as to how it happened, which what we do is just remind people what they already know. And like you said, we tend to park those emotions, those unprocessed emotions in a long-term parking, and we don't want to relive that pain or that discomfort, right? We don't think of revisiting that. But once we acknowledge and we bring those unprocessed emotions to our field of perception, and then we know the details, that's why it really helps a lot doing the lifetime reading. You have all the details of how it happened, when it happened, with whom it happened, and what emotions were triggered. Then you are consciously and based on the specifics that you're given, encouraged to program the new, which is the opposite of the old, and then this take the power away from those unprocessed emotions, and they're no longer will hold you hostage. Yes.
And what success have you had with people in doing this? What's been the effect on people?
I would say people overall have written to us that we've given them their life back. They feel free, happy. And they say it's not even about raising their own frequency. And even if the frequency is higher, it's not that you don't experience those things anymore, but they no longer have a grasp over your life and how you respond or react to different circumstances. So most people write to us and say that we gave them their life back, their freedom.
Mm-hmm. Yes, and when they know what's possible, how is it that they were able to transcend their frequencies, as if they were, experiencing all these dips, especially, and they go, oh my God, I was born at 100, the level of fear, and now I am at 400 or 500, and I've been through a lot. That's amazing how much they are enjoying the role that they're playing, and their compassion and their self-awareness. You start really revealing all these factors, and they realize, I've done very well, and it's usually due to their commitment to personal growth.
Yeah, this fear frequency, 100, I think you said.
Mm-hmm.
How prevalent is that in the human race?
Very. We see many people actually born at this frequency, and many people experience this frequency at some point in their life. And we always say that we call it the hero's journey, people that actually are able to shift from fear into much higher frequencies. So to us, it's the most profound experience. It's the most powerful experience. And when people truly see the numbers, because we always say numbers give you a big story, depth of really what you've gone through. And for people to be honored in that way and be seen for what they've gone through and for being appreciated, so they can appreciate themselves, that everything they've done was right. Mm-hmm. So this frequency of 100 is a challenge to overcome, but we see it over and over and over that it's possible.
Yes, and I feel that it does exist, and it is present.
Yes.
I don't think it's going to go away completely, but it's just how much we allow it to control us, or how much we allow it to dictate. And of course, the worst case scenario is when it becomes the predominant emotion, right?
Yeah. So this disconnection, where let's say the conscious mind, for want of a term, the five sense mind perception becomes dictated from the greater, disconnected from the greater self. How does that work within what you do?
Yes. So one of the things that we measure is the fragmentation aspects. We call it the separation from soul. And this is something that we see over and over and over. And it happens in most cases, not every case, in utero. From in utero to birth, the first fragmentation happens. And this usually happens in order to for the baby to handle the impact of all the emotions the mom is experiencing, or the mom is part of that. It's part of her environment, right? A baby part of it will fragment itself, almost like contract itself so it can hold all these emotions and be able to handle life. And then we see throughout life where these fragmentations happen further and further. So one of the things that we remind people of course, is of those fragmentations, is to really, at the end, to claim yourself back into wholeness, to remind yourself that you're whole and complete. Mm-hmm. And this is very important to do it consciously.
That would fit with some cultures where no conflict, no aggravation, nothing is allowed around a pregnant woman. Because exactly what you've talked about, the impact of the emotions of the mother on the child.
Yeah, so now scientists are already measuring also how emotions that mom is experiencing are directly correlated to the baby's response. And they've actually looked in the sonograms, right? And they could see if a mom is being stressed out, the baby is having stress response as well. So science is looking into it as well, which is really important. And we see it over and over, how many pregnancies that we've read where women are worried, they're in fear, they're panicked, they're feeling guilt and shame. So it's also an important message from us to remind women, to remind men to be very conscious, because all of those emotions are being imprinted onto your unborn child.
Mm-hmm. So how do we take this whole approach, philosophy, field, and apply it to current events? Because we have a world that is obviously under a lot of stress, is in to a large extent in fear, the fear of some virus, or fear of the consequences of the response, i.e. their business is gone, their employment's gone, and what have you. So we are in a collective time of great upheaval and stress and fear. How would you deal with that from your point of view and your work?
Do you want to respond to that?
It's a hell of a question.
Yeah, I mean, I can tell you what has David. I can tell you what has helped us. So yes, the stress is real. Mm-hmm. The fear is real. I would say that for us, what helped us a lot during the last year and a half is being more of observers, detaching, and becoming much more in tune with ourselves. So viruses have always existed, whether it's a biological weapon or not. Okay.
Or whether it exists or not.
Whether they exist or not. So all kinds of things will come at us throughout history. This has been shown over and over and over. And again, this is a reminder of, if you're consumed by the news, by the media, and it's bringing your frequency down and you're feeling down and you cannot see yourself escaping that, I would say this is the biggest invitation. Fear should be your biggest invitation to disconnect from what you're consuming and allow yourself to go within in order for you to bring your frequency up, to radiate your light, because by all of us staying in the fear frequency, nothing is ever going to shift.
Mm-hmm. Yes, we can't come up with the right solution from that place. And we have the power to transcend, to increase our vibrational frequency, and therefore our perspective of life will be different, will feel different. And that is, from that place, we can really come up with the right solutions. Right?
I would say compassion is another factor. Having the compassion for everything around you, and that includes yourself.
Well, I mean, this kind of fits with where I've been coming from for a long time, which is the foundation of the manipulation and control of humanity is coming from a network of secret societies that are secret for a reason. They're holding on to the sort of information that we're talking about, and they don't want the population to have it. because they know that if they can hold the population in a low frequency state, in a fear state, then they become controllable. And this is why, I wanted to talk today, because this is the arena, this is the stadium, this is the area that this change is going to take place. Because if we can move from these manipulated low frequency states of fear and anxiety and fragmentation and self-identity with the minutiae of labels, and start to realize that we are a point of attention, ultimately all attention within all that is, has been, and ever can be. That self-identity is about being all-powerful, when what the manipulation wants us to do, the 55 frequency, is to think that we're just little me and just our labels and we have no power. And you were telling me that the frequency of the two words I am all that is, has been, and ever can be, I just am, is a very, very high frequency. Is that correct?
Yes. It vibrates at the frequency of 1000, which is the highest for the human experience in this reality. And so anything that you put after it in present tense will turn it into an extremely powerful affirmation. And imagine that you were imprinted emotions while being in utero without, not knowing what was happening. It was not happening consciously, of course. Imagine how much you can accomplish, and one can accomplish, by doing it consciously and knowing that the word I am is really very powerful, right? We've heard this often, but now that we know that it vibrates at the frequency of 1000, it makes a huge difference. That's why it makes such a great impact when we give people the unprocessed emotions that we find in their field, because then they can chant the opposite of those emotions in using the word I am, right? If they have unsafe as an unprocessed emotion imprinted in their field, then they can say, I am safe. And that, with practice, until they practice it enough until they become one with it, right? They integrate it in every cell of their bodies, of their being, and that will become their new way of being, and it will take away the power of the old programming. And that's how they start to feel. Usually they say, I start feeling lighter. Can you please check my frequency again? I feel love more often. And that seems simple, but it works. It definitely works.
But I am is a kind of recognition that you are.
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
You're not a being, you're an isness. You just
Yes.
am. And everything just is. And the labels are just basically labels for experiences that we're having briefly. They're not the I. And it's what seems to have happened is that we have been manipulated into self-identifying with the experience, thinking it's the I, instead of with the consciousness that's having the experience and is on an eternal journey of exploring forever. And from that point of view, you see the long game. So an experience within the 80 years and 10 of a tiny band of frequency we call the world looks different from that self-identity than it does if you just identify with the labels. And by identifying with the labels, you're identifying with limitation, and I can't, and it's not possible.
That's right. What helps me see this whole experience on Earth, I always compare it to, imagine that your higher self is the director and the producer of the movie. And you choose different cast members to play out different characters. So I like to give always an example of Batman and the Joker, right? So both of those actors are great people, as an example, right? From a higher perspective. But one chooses to play the shadow role and one chooses to play the light role. So who is to say, yes, in this reality, they're playing out as good and bad, evil and light, but from a higher perspective, it's just an experience on this plane. So seeing everything through a lens of non-attachment, non-judgment, definitely helps you understand yourself better, but also not be limited to the labels, right, of what we call having a human experience. We're just having an experience here.
Yes.
And there'll be another one along tomorrow. There always is. That's the great thing about life, whatever the long game or short game. Whatever you're experiencing now, it's what you're experiencing now. There'll be another experience along eventually. And, you know, when you see how people can transform, there is this feeling I know a lot of people have that, you know, they're born into a certain situation and that's their lot for life. I know I was born onto a council estate in Leicester in England, and, you know, poor wasn't the freaking word. I mean, you know, especially in my early years, and there was this feeling that, you know, this is your lot. You've been born into it, and this is you. But I never accepted that. Anyone can be can transform into something else, no matter what's happened before. If you can go beyond it, then you can see those experiences as a gift that's awakened you, and not as a ball and chain that's holding you down. And yet the emotions are exactly, the experience is the same, but it's our interaction with it dictates whether it's a gift or a ball and chain.
Yes, and I would say actually in your case and in so many other cases, of what helped you transcend that is your, of course, commitment to personal growth, but I would call that curiosity. Having curious and open nature will help you. So it's always reminding ourselves to keep that childlike curiosity alive as long as we're alive, because that is what's going to help us shift, explore, and take us on a journey that is beyond anything that we've ever imagined. And that's probably what happened to you. You've had this incredibly curious mind.
Yeah, I want to know what's going on.
Yeah.
Fascinates me. So where can people get hold of you then?
Yes, people can get a hold of us on wholistic.com, WHOLISTIC. And of course, we have Vibrational Revelations, where we do weekly revelations of public and historic figures.
And I can't let you go without asking you about number 55.
Yes.
I know you have found this frequency in a lot of organizations, because an organization is a frequency field, isn't it?
Yes.
And in people that probably have made many appearances in my books, actually. So what's this frequency of 55 then?
Yes, frequency of 55 is a frequency of apathy, but underneath this apathy, of course, combined with a couple of other things in their charts that we read, which it's very common. We see this in political figures, in a lot of the organizations, right? Or just big names, some of the big names that we've read. 55 ultimately is the frequency of manipulation, because when you create a shield, and we believe a lot of it comes from trauma, so some people can transcend the trauma, right? And not inflict the pain onto others. And in many of the cases of 55 frequencies, the opposite happens. They're the ones that seek out victims and manipulate whatever their agenda might be. So 55 is a very common frequency that we find in the relationships area, in personal growth area, in intuition and philanthropy. You can see this as a common theme, together with low compassion,
low integrity,
low
transparency.
Yes.
But then by looking at the whole chart, you can see that they have decided that is a comfortable place to be at. And so they decide consciously to remain there. No?
So enough of talking about Bill Gates. So it's interesting from what you've just said that so many of these elite families, shall we say, or where they think they're elite, they do put their children through trauma as kids, you know, and almost developing that frequency in them for a purpose. That's very interesting. So thanks very much for talking to us, and it's been fascinating, and I do absolutely believe that this area that we're discussing here, this is the answer. This is the way out of here, because you know we're not manipulated into low vibrational states of fear for a bit of fun, but because that's how they can control us, and we have the power to break out of it. And congratulations on all your work. Thanks for talking to me.
Thank you so much,
Thank you
David.
so much. Thank you.
Thank you.